Joining me for today's NBA Finals preview, I've got the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Keith Smith. Keith, my man, it's been a minute since we caught up with each other. How's it going?
It's going good, man. I'm beyond fired up for the finals. It's just too far away still. We still got too many days to go. This whole clinching early and no move update stuff is rough. We'll get there. We'll get a few more days and a couple more days for Chris Porzingis to get healthy. I'm with it.
First season that you've not been covering the Celtics and they're back in the finals. You were covering them in 2022. This season, you've been more NBA as a whole focused, doing some amazing work over at Spotrac. That website's just gone from strength to strength this year. How's it been for you watching more as a fan and not needing to overanalyze every aspect of every game?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. This has been a highly enjoyable season. Obviously, the team is incredible. They won so many games by wide margins. They played most of the year, played really fun basketball to watch. I think the offseason acquisitions of Holiday and Porzingis have worked out better than anybody ever could have imagined. Them working out. It was almost like all the best case scenarios came true with those guys. It was like, well, if everything works out right, this is how Porzingis will work. Everything works right, this is how Holiday will work. And then I think even unheralded guys like Luke Cornett and Peyton Pritchard and O'Shea Brissett, like they've all stepped forward and had moments for this team too. Al Horford, still a blast. How I feel about both the Jays and Derek White, blast too. So, I mean, this has been absolute, ride of a season, and playoffs weren't overly stressful as they kind of zipped right through the first three rounds. But I think it's going to get a little different now here in the finals.
You've definitely watched more Dallas games than me. I mean, by a significant margin. I'm trying to do my film work now and catch up. There's only so many games you can cram into life when everything else is going on. There are different teams. It's that PJ Washington edition. They move out Grant Williams. They bring in PJ Washington. Their defense just goes to a different level. I feel like they've really consolidated their rotation. Where are you kind of looking at this as the Celtics can get an advantage, or they can find gaps to at least come with some consistent offense?
Yeah, offensively, there's still attack points. Luka and Kyrie are not good defenders. They're not bad defenders, but they're average when they're putting in a ton of effort. And clearly that's by design at this point in both of their careers. They carry such a large offensive load. You're not asking them to step out and shut down the other team's main scorers or anything like that. So I think with those two guys, there becomes a lot of it's you could pick your moments, but you can't get ridiculous about it. Like I don't want to see the Celtics turn it into, which we've seen in the past, 20 seconds of each shot clock trying to find the mismatch. And then you find it, and then there's so little time left. All you can take is kind of a contested jumper. I'd rather get into your early offense. Quite honestly, if Luke is on Holiday, play through Holiday stuff. Let him just go direct at him. They've done that throughout the course of the playoffs. Derek White is drawing him, or Derek White's drawing Kyrie. Play through Derek White some too. And I think they're pretty comfortable doing that. Another thing you got to be very cautious of now is Gafford and Lively. Those two guys are always kind of lurking in help positions. I think a challenge will be, I don't know that they can get away with that quite as much with Porzingis out there. If he is, maybe a little more so if Al Horford's out there. It seems like teams are a little more willing to say, hey, if Al Horford shoots the lights out and beats us, so be it. Porzingis, I think, just draws a different level of attention. So I think for the Celtics, a lot of it is going to be Tatum and Brown are going to get theirs, of course, but it's going to be playing with that balance, letting other guys, even if they're not the play finishers, let them be the play initiators and see where it all goes from there. Try to get Dallas cycling, moving, try to get them in a spot where you're attacking downhill and open it up, stuff like that. I think that's how you get at these guys.
And when it comes to the defensive side of the ball for Boston, how are you looking at the matchups there? Are you seeing cross matches with, like, maybe you put Drew Holiday on a big, so then he gets to jump out on Luka as Luka comes off his pick and roll? Or do you see it being more straight up where it's just like, hey, JB, we want you to go straight at Luka. bunker down on him and just make life tough on every possession.
Yeah, I think we're gonna see a lot of different guys take turns on Luka, and a handful of different guys take turns on Kyrie as well. I think Luka is the head of the snake, if you will, right? You've gotta you're not gonna stop him. I'm not gonna suggest that that's ridiculous that anybody thinks he can be shut down, but you just wanna make him have to work. Make it difficult on him, make him have to make reads, try to turn him into a playmaker, if he can, which he is a very willing one, but try to get him in positions where he's just seeing different. I think you're gonna see a lot of different looks from Boston. I think some of it will be pretty straight up. I think it'll be White on Holiday, excuse me, White on Irving, Holiday on Doncic, uh, Tatum or Brown on Jones and Washington. That can flip flop, and then Porzingis, Horford on the big, whoever's out there out of Gafford and Lively. But I do think there's worlds where you can play with that a little bit. Lively and Gafford aren't guys who are going to go down and mash you in the post. They are very much play finishers where they need to be set up. And we've seen Boston live with put Tatum on the other opposing five and then let Porzingis roam. And I think even though Derek Jones Jr. has been a pretty good shooter this season, I think there's a world where you say, let Porzingis roam off him, let Horford roam off him, let Cornette really kind of play off him. Cornette will probably defend the bigs because he's better staying close to the basket. But if you do that, now you're a little bit switched into if Luka or Kyrie calls the big up to set the screen, you're switching on to Tatum, which is not a great match. Right, for it's still not bad because Luka and Kyrie are that good, but it's just harder to attack than it is Porzingis or Horford's. I think you're gonna see some games off ball played where it'll be, "Hey, let's pre-switch this, let's jump switch this," so we're out of it as they go to call it up. I don't think you're gonna see a lot of 2 on the ball. Boston doesn't do that. They haven't done that. Dallas isn't a team that thrives on pull-up shots the way a lot of others do. So I don't know that them stepping into a host of pull-up jump shots is really going to be a thing. So I think you'll see a heavy dose of the drop coverage with the big. It'll probably be drop and recover, meaning I'm going to drop, but I'm going to drop deep enough that I can also take away the lob, which that's where Porzingis' size comes in a big, big way. So I think that's where you'll see that. But I'm going to guess out of Tatum, Brown, Holiday, and White, they are all going to get their turn on both Doncic and Irving throughout the course of this series.
We mentioned the big, and obviously we got Chris Stapps. That the conversation at the minute is he should be back, right? Everybody's expecting Porzingis back.
Yep.
The question you've got to ask yourself is, and I don't know where you stand on this, do you throw him straight back into the starting lineup? Do you have him as an impact guy off the bench, at least for a game or two, while you test where that conditioning level's at and where the mobility is? Or do you just kind of be like, hey, we've seen you in practice. We know where you're at in terms of mobility, and conditioner will come with playing time. We're just going to thrust you in there and then manage your minutes depending on how your body responds. What are you expecting from them?
I think more of the latter. I one is if he's not healthy enough to play, they don't play him. That's I think the clear bigger thing. But it seems like he's pretty healthy. Seems or as healthy as he's gonna get at this point. I've seen people still say, well, maybe you hold him out and see if you get behind in the series. Like then that's not a smart decision. Just if he can play, he can play. And I think he'll go right into the starting group. That's what they've done throughout the course of the year. When he's missed time at other points in the year, he's missed this time. He's come back. Gone right back into the starting lineup. So I think that's what you do. You plug him right back into the starting five. But you can still manage his minutes that way. You might play him at least initially through that first under 7 timeout in the first quarter, and then maybe have Forford come on for him. I do think in the early part of the series we might see Cornette play a little bit in kind of that third backup role there, where just to keep Porzingis from having to go 28, 30 minutes right out of the gate. It might be we really don't want him to go 20, and then Cornette can eat up those other 5, 8 minutes, and that's how you'll play it. Horford will get all the rest. So I think that's how it might start out. But if he's moving well and playing well, then you just pretty quickly you morph right back into what the normal rotations were, which was him getting 30-ish minutes, playing some with Horford. Horford still getting his 25, 28 minutes, and that's what you got. I don't then Cornette disappears from the rotation, and you go with Pritchard and Hauser, and there's your 8 guys, and that's how you run it. I think he'll be right back in there right from the jump. I'll be kinda surprised if he's not.
So I've got two questions to come off this response. First of all, how much do you see the Kristaps Porzingis pick and pop being a threat, or do you see them using him more in that like nail region, getting him to kind of take a short roll and attack out of that mid post area around the nail? And secondly, sorry, high post area and around the nail. And secondly, do you believe it would be Luke Cornett, or do you worry about Cornett's mobility and maybe Tillman makes more sense there? But to me, Tillman just hasn't popped the way anyone hoped he would, but he also hasn't had enough opportunity to really have a fair shot at popping.
Yeah, I'll answer the second part because I think it's the easier part to answer first. Cornette, one of the things he has done really well is protect the rim. He's generally been somebody he's actually pretty good at timing it up and breaking up lobs. And there might not be it's Luka or Jokic. It's one of the two as you go back and forth, who's the best lob and who's the best late lob thrower in the league, because they're both really good at like, oh, this is definitely a floater. Oh no, they lobbed it over your head and the guy flew in behind and dunked. Cornette's gotten really good at being able to get back on those and tip the ball away and break those plays up. Tillman doesn't quite. Tillman's just far more ground bound. But I think there's a world where, let's say we are in a series where Gafford and Lively are just kind of feasting on the boards and they're super physical and they're ragdolling guys. Then I could see them throw in Tillman and let Tillman kind of get in there a little bit more. So there's a place for both of them. I just think it's become increasingly clear throughout the course of the playoffs. Missoula's comfort level is with Cornette. That's been his guy all year in that third center role, and I think that'll continue to be. Now, to your first part of the question, hey, I'm gonna kind of be that meme where the little girl says, "Why not both?" Right? Because I think that's what we're gonna see with Porzingis. If we go back to the game that took place after the trade deadline, the one before the trade deadline, it's almost not even worth watching because Dallas is such a different team. But the one that happened after the trade deadline, there's parts of it that I think, can take away. I don't think the Celtics are going to come in and be a 20-point better team than the Mavericks are, but I do think there's elements of that game. And one of the things that stood out to me, especially right off the jump, I think Porzingis had like 3 3-pointers in the first quarter of that game. And one of the things you saw was Derek Lively, rookie center. Now, Derek Lively, since that game, he's had roughly 4-ish more months of experience. Or I guess 3 months more of experience. So, but what you saw in that game was Boston ran their sets that are designed for Porzingis to pop. Porzingis pops. Lively closes out to the 3-point line, gets his foot on the arc, and then he's like, "Oh crap." He's still 3 to 5 feet further. That's the element Porzingis brings that very few other even pick and pop centers bring, is that deep spacing. He's out in the range where we're talking Luka, Trey Young, Steph Curry range. He'll shoot from there. He doesn't shoot as well as those guys do, obviously, but he shoots from back there and hits a good amount of them. So what you saw multiple times in that game was Lively, I think, almost felt like, all right, I've executed perfectly. I'm right where I'm supposed to be, except this big dude who's 7'3", almost impossible to block anyway. He's now an additional 3 to 5 feet further back. So I should have closed another couple feet out before I went up. So I think that's one of the things that's going to be a big thing. Then I think what you'll see is if Lively and Gafford, or if they go to Powell or they go to Washington in the small ball role, then what you'll see is, all right, we've adjusted to that. Now we've pulled it out. That's when I think Boston, whoever the ball handler is, it's often Tatum, is hold it for a beat. Now let him work himself down around the nail and get it to him. The biggest change, and you probably remember, 'cause I think we talked about it. Back when Boston traded for Kristaps Porzingis, I repeatedly told people did not watch him play in Washington. He changed his game when he was with the Wizards, where it was no longer, he started out of, I either shoot 3-pointers or I will try to get a small and I'm going to back him down and try to mash him in the goal. He stopped playing like that in Washington. It was more, let me just get to my spot. There's like 2 guys in the NBA who can challenge my jumper, and one of them is Victor Wembanyama, and he's not playing anymore. And I don't, and that, there may not even be another one. But Wembanyama is definitely one of them. He's not obviously involved. So Porzingis is very comfortable getting to anywhere between 10 and 15 feet and just turning and shooting over guys. Or he's also really adept at turning, faking, drawing the foul, getting the player to jump into him. Or he's really good at that step through give and go where he gets the guy into the air, passes it off, and then he goes to the basket and gets it back as the defense rotates. I think you're going to see a lot of both. And I think I threw it out on Twitter. Wonder if Dallas would try to zone it all because Derek Jones Jr. has historically been a very good zone player. The challenge is Boston's almost become zone proof because Porzingis just goes right to the nail. No one can get to the ball when they throw it into him there. He either scores or gets everything moving and finds a play himself. Or Tatum's actually gotten really good at that spot too. So it becomes really, really hard to zone them. So, yeah, I don't know that Dallas has a great answer other than let's hope he's not in rhythm early and it takes him a little while.
The question is then, how much does Boston's overall mid-range game affect the way Dallas plays defense, right? Because this year they've really embraced that mid-range. Obviously, it's not a huge part of their offense because it's not a huge part of any team's offense outside of Chicago with DeMar DeRozan, and even then, it's still marginal. But you've got Jaylen Brown that can stop and pop from anywhere in that mid-range. I could like to call it as like the drive counter. If the defense is really on his hip, he'll just stop on a dime and just rise up. And there's not really a load up on Jalen's shot. He just kind of bounces and he's above everybody. Jason Tatum can work out the mid post. He can face up and score on you that way. He can take a dribble pull up. Kristaps Porzingis can do that. We've even seen Sam Hauser start to add that 1/2 dribble pull up just to attack closeouts. And he's not as he's not as automatic from the mid range as he is from deep, but that's going to come. This is the first year we've seen him developing that aspect. When you look at the way Dallas plays defense, they like to pressure the 3-point line. They don't do a great job of impacting those 3-point shots, but they're there, they're up high, and then you obviously have your Daryl Morey kind of defense where it's protect the free, protect the rim, live with the mid range. So I feel like there's going to be a steady diet there available if Boston wants it. Do you see them forcing any defensive alterations from Dallas because of the available space they're just going to be able to get a diet from?
Yeah, I think that's a good call out. I think one of the things that we'll see Um, Boston do too. His White and Pritchard are both very comfortable getting into the mid-range pull-up shot, especially if the defense is in any kind of drop style coverage or even if they're in a switch and the switch isn't right where it needs to be, which that happens sometimes with Luka and Kyrie. Not both of them tend to die on screens a little bit. But then what happens you usually see is the big pulls over, and he'll even pull over early if he's got the opposing big behind him. So that's where Boston is very comfortable with stay spaced, let Porzingis or Holiday work off of a Brown screen or a screen for each other or a Tatum screen, then dribble into that. And White is he takes like some of the further out. It's weird because they're almost like floaters, but they're more like a floating jump shot, like a runner type shot. And he likes to take those from out in that range. And Pritchard is very comfortable to pull up in that spot if he feels like he can get there. So I think those two guys, as well as everybody you mentioned, they're going to be weapons in that position. I think that's an important shot. It's just you can't get baited into taking it too often, especially if it's coming at the expense of taking a three. I know people. I feel like they're going to be raising the banner, and people are going to be like, they shoot too many 3-pointers. Like it's almost just going to be how people feel. But clearly, they want to get up a number of 3-pointers. I'll say this: if you don't like 3-point shooting, you're not going to like this series because these two teams take the most in the league. The two of them, they hunt 3-pointers, they take a ton of them. That's their goal. So I think in this case with Boston, though, it is. I've gotten very fond of saying perfect is the enemy of good. Don't keep searching for a perfect shot if a good one presents itself. And I think that sometimes those good ones are going to be those mid rangers, as long as you don't overdo it. Same thing with you can't overdo it with going to the basket. If Dallas says, you know what, let's stay really hugged up on Porzingis and Horford, and really hugged up on the line, that's going to open up things inside. We saw both Miami and Cleveland beat Boston when they basically said, we're just not going to let you get 3-pointers off the way you want to. They overshot from inside the arc, especially around the rim. And part of the problem is the Celtics, they're just not always a great finishing. Even when it's wide open, they're not always finishing. And that can become a little bit of a problem there too. So you got to stay true to yourself. Stay true to your offensive principles and what your concepts are, but don't pass up good shots if they are there.
When you're talking about pushing up on the perimeter, taking away the 3-point shot, I like to call these players release valves, right? You always need a release valve when there's pressure everywhere. There's always a way to unlock that pressure and hit that release and just get yourself an easy jumper. For most of the season, that's been a Drew Holiday in the corner. We're going to drive and get into our spray game. We're going to drive and spray the ball into the corner, find Drew Holiday. He's going to hit at a reasonable rate. So around 40% for the season, if I remember correctly. He flipped a switch midway through that Cavs series and he never looked back, right? He's just been excellent. Now, I see him as a major release valve throughout this series. And one of the narratives that I've kind of been leaning heavily into is this is his first year not being a second or third option on offense. So he's not facing the same level of defender as what he previously has. He also doesn't have the same workload defensively because there's multiple points of attack guys that you can iterate through. So now Drew's just being allowed to kind of live. You know what I mean? There's a bit more freedom and he's thriving because of that. So I see him as a potential release valve in this series in the corner. Now, there's a world where Dallas try and hug up on that corner and take it away from you. But I feel like Drew's so good at making that next read and making that secondary drive to create that next read that he might be the cog that makes these close games not close enough to be classed as a time win, you know? How do you feel about Drew in terms of just his connectivity and his way to be able to hit, catch, and shoot threes, be able to shoot off the dribble? And do you see him as like the ideal release valve in this series?
Yeah, all the things you mentioned. Plus, I like him, especially against Kyrie and a couple of the other Mavs. Maybe with Luka, I think sometimes teams try to post up Luka. It's almost like when teams will go out of their way to try to post up James Harden, and the Rockets are like, "Please do. He's so strong. Like you're not going to get where you want to go." He just sets his base and kind of holds off. Luka can do a lot of the same things, but Holiday has been very good against the smaller guys. Fine, if you're gonna put this guy on me, I'm just gonna take him down to the block, and I'm gonna kind of old school, almost like Mark Jackson, like back him down. And then Mark Jackson did it looking for passes. Holiday's looking for it. I'll go to my lefty shot, a little lefty flip shot he likes, or I'll get into the lane with my right hand and finish that way. Or if you're really gonna bring help, then I will get the ball moving. I'll find a cutter or I'll find somebody else. That part of it's gonna be huge. In addition to the shooting, the pull up shots, everything else that he does. I think he's going to be big. I won't be surprised if, when all is said and done, he's like Boston's second or third leading scorer in the series because the Mavs just, they may say, we got to live with something, especially if Porzingis is going. You have to live with something. And more often than not, teams have said that's something we're okay with being Drew Holiday because Derek White is such an improved shooter. And then obviously Tatum, Brown, and Porzingis are very hard to stop. So I think that becomes, all right, we'll live with Holiday if we're going down because Drew Holiday's beating us. But again, I'll go to, you can't overdo it because the Mavs would love nothing more if 10, 15 times a game it was a left-handed flip shot from the post from Drew Holiday, right? Like they would love that. Even if they're going in at a pretty good rate, because every time they're making one of those, the Celtics are making a three on the other end. So I think that's something you just have to be very cautious of that you don't overdo it. But there's definitely gonna be time where when it's Kyrie Irving out there, when it's Jaden Hardy out there, that those are the guys you can kind of go at if you're Holiday in those spots and get there. He's also really good too because Dallas will like they love to send help in those spots. He's such a good passer that he's generally pretty good about. All right, you send the help. I'll even hold it right until the last second and then drop it off to a bigger cutter, cutting wing right at the rim for a first shot there. So you got to really be tightened up if you're going to send help. If you're Dallas, and again, then you got to decide, all right, what are we going to live with?
Well, just to build on that, as the kids would say, you need to make sure the math is mathing. So you need
Yep.
to make sure that, your steady diet of twos is fine as long as you have a steadier diet of perimeter shots. And it's all about the process, right? Not every 3-point shot is made equal. So finding those right opportunities is going to be more important than just taking any opportunity. I kind of want to move this into more not narrative based, but I definitely want to get your thoughts on a few of the trending topics, right? And I don't like doing this, but I feel like we've been super technical for most of the show. So just to kind of ease it up on the way out, Jason Tatum. I've seen Jason Tatum this year as a complete player. He's still getting his offense, but he's getting it within the flow of the game itself. He's creating that flow. He's controlling the tempo. He's rebounding at an elite level. He's been a high level defender, primarily as a help defender, but he has had on ball reps and shown like a complete on ball package as well, just because of his size and length. In terms of a playmaker, his leaps and bounds from where he was even 18 months ago, making those high level reads where are 2, 3 passes away, seeing guys in the corner out of double teams and hitting those swing passes. People are saying he hasn't been effective because he's not putting up 40, 50 points a night. But he's a complete player right now. He's quarterbacking everything. Do you see him being the same version of Tatum we've seen up to this point? Or do you see him kind of leaning more into hey, I'm still one of the best scoring forwards in the NBA when I need to be?
Um, I think he will go out there and get his, but I think it's gonna be what he's done all year long. It'll come in the flow. There'll be a couple times and it'll be, all right, I'm gonna remind everybody, and it'll be one of those 100 dribble plays where then he takes a because that's fine. When those ones are going in, there's almost no better show in the league, right? It's like, here we go. He's got it going and he's feeling it. Those haven't really gone in the playoffs, but I think he has really settled into a point where he makes the right play far more often than he makes anything resembling a I got to get a shot at myself here kind of play. And that's huge for the Celtics. His passing, and it's not even because people will still say, people keep raving about his passing, right? Because they have to make the comparison to Luka. And what they'll say is like, everybody keeps talking about his passing, his passing, his passing. He's only averaging 6 assists per game in the playoffs or whatever. I think it's just a nudge under that. But he is very good at I bet he's gotta be way up there in hockey assists, where it is he's making the pass that leads to the pass that gets the bucket. And that's great because that to me says he's accepting the defense, he's accepting the coverages he gets, then he makes a read. He makes probably, I'll say twice a game, a pass where I'm like, "What were you doing?" Like you threw this lollipop into traffic that was easily picked off, or you rifled that thing 1,000 miles an hour and dude was right next to you, like no one could have caught. But that's what happens, right? When you have the ball line, you're gonna make a couple bad decisions at least every game, but more often than not, he's making the right reads. He's really got good chemistry with his teammates, and they know when to cut, when to kind of stay rooted to the spot. Like Al Horford and him's chemistry is off the charts. Horford knows I got to stay. Like he's gonna open me up. He's gonna find me on these plays, and that's been big. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that further evolution. But I do think there's going to be a game or two where it's going to be, all right, we need a bucket. Here we go. And more often than not in these playoffs, he's either got it himself or he's directly set it up himself by making a great play. And that's all growth. That's all him coming along and figuring it out.
Complete player. I really believe he's just such an all round talent now. And
Yeah.
that doesn't always sell the highlights on social media, but it wins games, right? And at the end of the
Yep.
day, winning games will create highlights in itself.
When
Sticking
I
with
think people just related to that too, people underrate his defense.
yeah,
Now it's almost like people have forgotten, like, this guy's a really, really good defender. Like, really, really good. Like, I encourage people really watch what he does, especially in this series. Watch what he'll do on switches with Kyrie. He is really good against the small, quick guards because he's so quick himself and he's so long. So he just kind of gets out there. I love when he picks up the guard and then he's like, arms are you can't see it on camera here, but he's got his arms all the way out, and it's like, whoa, this dude's wingspan is off the charts. Like, and that's the ones where it's like, and he gets down in the stance, and he's moving with the guard with that big wingspan, and he does a really nice job in those spots. He's gonna get Kyrie, he's gonna get Luka some, and they'll get him sometimes because that's how good those two are. But more often than not, I think he's gonna hold his own. Even if he doesn't stop him, he's gonna challenge the shot, make it a difficult one. And they'll go in sometimes because, again, Luka and Kyrie are that good.
I mean, I've always been a big believer at this level or against guys of Luca and Kyrie. The aim is to contain, not to
Yeah.
stop, because you don't
Yep.
stop them. And that was a very easy lesson learned from He Got Game. So, we have to shout out where we learn our stuff from. Isolations, I want to end it on this, right? There's been a lot of talk about Boston being an ISO heavy team, and statistically, they are quite an isolation heavy team. I kind of pushed back on that recently and said, yeah, they do isolate, but the system they have leading into the isolation is where the different, like the the differentiator comes into this, because yes, you're isolating, but you're isolating after finding a mismatch. As you mentioned earlier, they do generate a large amount of mismatches. They screen a lot. They have a good early offensive system to create the mismatch or the matchup that they want to exploit. And they do that frequently and very, very quickly. Then they isolate from there. If there's nothing there, they do hit a secondary play. They flow into something else because they're getting the ball up the floor faster. And I know this was an issue for you 18 months ago, where it was like, hey, you're not getting into your first action until there's 12 seconds left. Now there's no time for a secondary offense if you get shut down. But with the isolation as a whole, even with the being good process, good systems, being put into a good position, do you feel like they'd be better served being more free flowing against Dallas? Or do you feel like their mismatch hunting and early offense kind of leads to a reliable production anyway?
Yeah, I think it play your style. You have to be who you are at this point. If you try to completely change who you are, you're gonna fail. It's not gonna go well. They all of a sudden went into we're gonna be a super duper pick and roll heavy team, right? Yeah, we'll one pick and roll into another, and we're gonna run a whole bunch of cold sets from the sidelines and those kind of things. It's not gonna work, and I think they know who they are. They Joe Mazzulla trusts his guys. Really, it's anybody he puts on the floor, he's gonna trust to make the right decision with the ball in their hands, that they're gonna make the right read. To that point, when they do get a little sideways, it's when they settle into, we rebounded the ball, we're gonna walk it up now, and then we're gonna go into an isolation, but the isolation is gonna start 40 feet from the basket with no real movement anywhere, and I'm just gonna dribble the life out of the ball until I have to take a crappy contested jump shot. I think where they're good is, to your point, is get it up the floor, get into something, find the matchup you want to attack. And then what they often do is they'll attack out of that isolation, but attacking out of that isolation then turns into a pass and maybe even a second pass. It's rarely Jason Tatum gets it, goes one on one, and then keeps it the whole time and shoots a shot. That happens sometimes for sure. The guy who's more often than not to do that is Jalen Brown. And White and Holiday, if they get it in an ISO, they're pretty regularly going to get the shot up against the guy they go after, because you're attacking a mismatch. You're finding the weakest defender and trying to go at him. So you're going to see some of that. Where I worry is not even, I don't even worry about the late game isolation stuff. That's where everybody, gets their hands ringing and they're like, all they do is ISO down the stretch of every game. Yeah, them and the other 29 teams in the NBA. It's everybody is throw your ball to your best player and get out of their way. Right? Like why is Boston the only one who's beholden to this? Everybody thinks it's like, oh, the coach calls up this incredible play where one guy's starts it and it's a driving kick and four other actions are happening away from the ball and all these things. That's just not how it usually works. It's usually get the ball to your best player and let them make a play one way or another. And I think where the Celtics have really matured is it isn't Tatum and Brown just hold it, take a jumper. Now they are a little bit better about, all right, we want to do an isolation, but we're going to attack on it. We're going to actually try to get inside. We're going to get downhill. We're going to make the pass, or we are going to use a screen to set up the mismatch, and then we go at it that way. So it really is, there's more variety to the attack than I think we've seen in the past, and that's where, in general, I like to see him play a little faster, most games. Now, challenge has been against Indiana. I think you saw at times Indiana, when they really got the pace in their favor, the Celtics started to struggle a little because they don't play quite that fast. And Indiana's an extreme example because they play really, really fast. Dallas, I know people have this impression of just like they do with Denver. Well, it's Luka, so they just walk the ball up every play. It's kind of this super efficient but plodding offense. Dallas is actually a far faster paced team than Boston is. it's like 3 possessions faster per game. So that's a whole other thing is, right, like, let's get it up the floor, quicker than the Celtics do. So I think that is something to watch. Now, that often comes in the form of Luka making a 60-foot pass to somebody that leads to a shot, before the defense is set. So that's gonna be something I'm gonna have to watch. But yeah, I'm not too worried about the whole all they do is ISO stuff because I think even when they do, it leads to something pretty good.
Well, I'm gonna wrap it up here. So I just want to get your prediction for the series, just to put you on the spot. I'm sure you're going to be doing this prediction a ton. I'll even throw mine out there as well. So I'm not putting you on an island. I'm taking Boston in 6. And I feel like that's a fair amount. I just don't want it to go to 7 games. So I'm manifesting that it stays under 7. Where are you on this? Do you see it going 7, 5, a sweep?
Yeah, so I am always hesitant to pick a higher seeded team winning in 6 because I think winning a closeout game on the road like that in the finals is really, really hard. Um, I know people I've already heard people yelling at me saying I'm crazy for this. I think it's gonna be Celtics in 5. I don't think Dallas can keep up and get stops with Boston the way Boston can keep up scoring wise and get stopped. The difference between the Celtics and every team the Mavs have played, and the difference between the Celtics and really almost every team in the league is we all know, or at least everybody should at this point, that they have a historically good offense. Their defense is really, really good too. We saw it there was a after that game 2 loss to the Heat, they basically came out and said, "All right, we're not messing like, just shut these guys down."
Yeah.
And they did it. The Cavs games, Cavs were a better team. They played them a little tougher, but in those games, the Celtics still, when they needed to, under 5 minutes to go in the 4th quarter, locked it down. They did that repeatedly against the Pacers in that series, even when the games were close. It was, we're gonna get stops, including game 4. Pacers didn't score for 3.5 minutes down the stretch of the game. The Celtics just locked in. Now, yes, there was one missed layup in there, but that's part of it sometimes. Sometimes you haven't scored for a couple minutes and you feel so much pressure that you miss a shot you normally wouldn't miss. But I think what you're going to see is the combo of the two, where Dallas is a better defensive team now than they were for long stretches of the year, but they're not as good as the Celtics are in that end, and that's where I trust it. I think Dallas is. I think Luka and Kyrie are going to do some stuff. I think the problem is rank the top 4 players in the series in almost whatever order you want. It's Luka, Tatum for me. Luka, Tatum, Brown, Kyrie, and that. But you could switch Brown and Kyrie if you really felt strongly. Switch Luka and Tatum. Luke is the best player in the series. I'm pretty confident in that. But then the next 3, maybe even 4 guys might be Celtics, because I'm assuming Porzingis is himself. So that's where the difference is. I trust those guys will step up and make plays. Then then you might get into, all right, Lively, then maybe Gafford, maybe Washington. But then I trust Pritchard, Horford, Hauser more than I trust any of the other Mavs backups. And that's where I think the difference is going to be. I will also say this, the waves of defenders that they're gonna show to Luka and Kyrie, I think is just gonna have them kind of, all right, I can't get in a super good rhythm attacking a guy because I'm not seeing that same guy every position here. And I feel that confident in the Celtics. They've been the best team in the league all year by a very wide margin. I think that continues into the finals.
I'm hoping that there's a banner parade, and are you gonna go if there is?
No,
No.
probably not. No,
No,
if
me
there's
neither.
Yeah, no. I'll stay home, watch it on TV. That's fine. I will go on that night though and order a hat and a t-shirt. That will happen. 100.
It's Father's Day soon, and the wife and my daughter were like, "What do you want for Father's Day?" And I was like, "Yo, there's an NBA Finals hat that's just dropped. There's an NBA Finals T-shirt that just dropped. Go get me those, and then if there's a championship, we can discuss a little deal. I might take you out for food. You can order me another hat. You know, we'll figure it out." Keith, man, it's always a pleasure having you on. I'm sure everybody at this point knows where to find you, but you have to at least plug it just in case there's somebody that's been living under a rock. And, it's the NBA Finals. New basketball fans are popping up every day. So where can everyone find you?
Yeah, you find me on Twitter X at Keith Smith NBA. You find out my written work at spottrack.com, and then you can find um, anything you're interested in with salaries is all there. That's kind of my labor of love over there. And you can also find on Spot Track, we just relaunched our NBA trade machine. It is, as far as I know, it's the only one that's got all of the new trade rooms acting accurately moving forward. So we've got that up there. We have a mock NBA draft tool that you can go play with on the draft page. You can predict the first round of the draft, and both of those have a shareable screenshot that you can take that you can then show people like this is a trade I came up with, or this is what my first round looks like. So we're super proud of those. A lot of effort went into getting those updated and ready to go. And then, if you're interested in more league-wide coverage, NBA Front Office Show, Trevor Lane and I, Monday through Fridays, do that show where we cover all the latest news and notes. This is a great time to get in over there because we'll be heavy into rumor season starting up here as 28 teams are done already. So there's a whole lot of stuff picking up around free agency, trade rumors, draft stuff. We've got all that going on covered over there. Every Friday is a live show. So if you want to pop in and hang out, that's the fan show. We answer questions pretty much for 90% of that show is just pulling questions from the audience and getting into stuff with that. So we have a lot of fun on NBA Front Office Show. We have a blast. You're probably going to get some obscure 80s and 90s movie references in there too. And occasionally a sidetracked off the rails rant about Marvel or some other silly thing that we care about, but we have a lot of fun on that show. And then if you're looking for even more coverage, the Basketball Bulletin, that's Trevor and I launched a Substack project that people can check out over there. We've got cool stuff right now. Bryce Simon is really carrying the day with NBA draft scouting reports. He's well over 35 players deep at this point into this draft. Tons of great notes on all these players. So I highly recommend folks subscribe over there and check that out too.
If anyone's listening that's already subscribed to the newsletter that I'm on, you'll see it as one of the recommended. It'll also be tagged in the the synopsis that I write. So just make sure you go sign up, man. Because but one of the first things I did when I saw that Keith had dropped a Substack was just go and sign up because you know that you're going to get a bunch of cap stuff. You're going to get a bunch of deep insight coverage. Trevor's also awesome. The Bryce is somebody that I've been introduced to throughout the newsletter. Like I wasn't aware of his work before he started working for you guys or with you guys, however that's structured. But he's been fantastic too. So it's a high
Amazing.
recommendation from me. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll also link the Basketball Bulletin and NBA front office in the description. Go show some love to Keith, please. And if you're new